Josh, is there anything more depressing than the morning where you take your Christmas decorations down?
When do you take yours down, by the way?
Like second, usually.
What, of January?
2nd or 3rd of January.
That long? You're supposed to wait 12 days, isn't it? So it's supposed to be
but
the
you've
5th or
run the
6th.
court. You know, it's a fucking lie, isn't
The
it?
day after Boxing Day in my house.
Shut up. Really?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Out with the old, in with the new. Let's not hang about.
After Boxing Day.
They make me claustrophobic after Boxing Day. It's all down, mate, after Boxing Day, yeah. And no, it's not depressing. I like it.
Oh, you just ruined my intro. Oh, I don't like it, man. I don't like. Well, okay, for most people, it's not going to be the day after Boxing Day.
Okay, yeah,
Usually
okay.
like early January.
Yeah, okay.
I find it really depressing.
Do you, yeah?
Because your house is full of lights and colour and festivities and jollity.
Yeah.
And then...
I bring those things to my house on
yeah. You're like, I want to get back to this as quickly as possible.
No, I get it. I think a lot of people find the gap between Christmas and New Year very depressing as well, don't they? My brother-in-law, they go away on holiday the day after Boxing Day.
Yeah, it's a good move. I think it's a good move.
Yeah, I don't know, man. Not when I've got young kids, because they just got all their stuff and that. I don't want to get on a plane and say, leave all the new things behind and go on holiday.
Have you asked them? They'll be like, do you want to go somewhere hot and sunny?
Yeah, I don't know.
You can bring your toys with you.
I don't know, man. I don't know.
Yeah, but we went to Ireland for Christmas, which was brilliant. It was loads of fun. And then had a nice, good break, coming back. But anyway, that's not why I was...
I've ruined your whole flow with that. No, it's not depressing.
So it's like a whole year away again, Christmas, right?
Yeah.
Just to reinforce that point. It came very quickly and disappeared very quickly, I think. If you could keep one thing that you enjoyed over Christmas throughout the year, what would it be?
More at home time.
I knew you were going to say that.
Yeah, no.
Something material, please.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
One material thing that I could keep from Christmas. Cheese.
Oh, yeah. Cool, man.
A lot of cheese was eaten over Christmas.
Yeah.
But no, the reason I say the family time, by the way, because the kids got chicken pox for the last 4 or 5 days that we were off.
Yeah.
So we were stuck in. But, you get all this, you spend all this money on Christmas, and the best present that we used the most was Uno. You play Uno?
We've talked about this.
Yeah.
I have, but like the problem with my kids who have played it in different circles is the rules are all bastardized now.
Yeah,
we can't settle on rules.
Yeah.
But I do enjoy it.
Yeah, no, we played so much of it. And we got Junior Monopoly. So I think my youngest now, who are 5 and 6, are ready for the move to full Monopoly. Big step.
Like board games, the quality of them is so crap compared to like when we were growing up.
Yeah, well,
do you agree?
Yeah, hyper-capitalist society, isn't it? The fucking board's paper now, isn't it?
Yeah, I can't get with it. I was like, the Monopoly that I played in the 80s, that was proper solid metal
pieces.
Yeah. Paper printed on both sides, not just one.
Yeah.
I can't get with board games produced in the modern age.
No, I agree with that, but I do love a board game. Do you know what else I also did? I bought, after Christmas, in the bit between Christmas and New Year, some Lego. I bought the old Wembley in Lego, 3,500 piece Lego set.
Did you build it?
I've spent a good few hours on it. But the problem is, I bought it thinking it would be, because me and kids got into Lego, me and the kids.
Yeah.
And I thought, we could build Wembley together, it'd be amazing.
Yeah.
But nah, it's proper, like the pieces are tiny.
Yeah.
It's like kids get out. Daddy's building Wembley. Get out.
Yeah. I know that's the problem with me and Lego is that I'm not a good, I'm not a good delegator, right? So that doesn't work. I haven't got the patience to do Lego with.
No, not with the
young
kids.
minds.
That's the problem. So I think I might get a puzzle. Might go back to puzzles.
Erin did a killer 1,000 piece puzzle
over Christmas.
Didn't see her for 4 days.
Yeah. No comment on whether that was a positive or negative.
Yeah. What would I like to keep for Christmas? The 1,000 piece puzzles.
What would you keep then? No, what would you keep? So I'm saying cheese and family time.
Cheese and family time.
Yeah, or cheese and chicken pox is my answer.
What would I keep? I would keep Baileys.
Baileys.
Because it's only
just plain Baileys, because there's a lot of different types now.
Plain.
Yeah.
Straight up Baileys.
Did a bottle of that once and was sick. It's not nice when it's not nice
No,
when it
and
comes
I
back
know,
out.
like, you just need to let it go in between
Yeah.
November and January.
Leah makes mini Guinnesses with Baileys.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I don't know how she makes them, but you put the Guinness on top of something, and the Baileys on top of a black drink, and the Baileys sits on top of it, so it looks like a Guinness, and it's a shot.
Wow.
Sorry, Baileys.
Party time.
I feel like you was going to say and.
And fairy lights. Don't look at me like that. I find them warming and nice. You know, just not colourful ones.
Yeah.
They're all right on a tree, but just
Where specifically? What, around the house on the outside?
on the fireplace.
Right.
I like the level of lighting involved. It just makes me feel all nice and fuzzy.
You can get decorative fairy lights in today's world. You know, the ones that.
No,
are
I know,
Christmassy.
but they don't. Yeah, but they're just for Christmas.
All right, we can't have your fucking cake and eat it, mate. So
I didn't ask for cake, Josh. Just fairy lights. So we're in January. I thought, do you know why I brought up Christmas? It's because everyone's so ready to move on. Like, it's like, oh, we can't talk about Christmas now for another 12 months. And all we can talk about is celebrities doing fitness videos and New Year resolutions. And
who's the big celebrities doing fitness videos?
I don't know.
No,
This is just a throwback to what I remember, like reality TV stars doing.
Yeah, I wonder
DVDs.
if that still goes down.
Well, no, people don't really buy
Not
DVDs anymore, do they?
anymore. No.
So I don't know. What do you reckon? Like, I'll probably online sort of courses. Sign up.
That'd
for
be
them.
me in 10 years.
It is you, right now. In a you.
When yeah, exactly.
What are you doing starting today, Josh?
In a you can still sign up. So get yourself over and see it. Yeah.
Where do people sign up for it? You might. So go on, give it a good plug.
Inner You, we are on the fifth ever cohort of Inner You, and you can sign up at freedomfromwithin.thinkific.com. And yeah, mate, we've got over 100 and nearly 170 people signed up now.
And if you can't remember that weird long
Just go to my
email,
website.
just go to Josh's website.
Yeah, joshconnolly.com.
And what is Inner You? Just quickly.
It's a 6-week process where I take people on a healing journey to understand themselves, reconnect with, and become their inner child's champion.
Brilliant. You weren't expecting that, were you? So
No, I wasn't. Yeah. No, I wasn't. I was waiting for a way to wrangle in the plug, actually.
Yeah, well,
there
I
it is.
I did it for you. No, the reason I brought Christmas up was because I just feel like everyone wants to talk about New Year, New You. And I was deliberately today not going to talk about New Year's stuff.
Yeah.
Because resolutions are shit and they will fail. Well, 80% of them fail by February. Did you know that?
I think you talked about it last year.
Or the
year before.
Well, you saying I'm boring.
Podcast,
Every year.
Yeah.
But I am more interested in intention.
Yeah.
So I got 2 questions just to kind of kick us off. The first one is, what's your personal intentions for this year?
Yeah.
And if I can, like, don't kind of talk about business or focus on that, because obviously, you know, that's going to be an important part, but really just an intention for yourself, right?
Yeah.
What's a gift to yourself? And then my second question is, what are you hopeful for society as a whole in 23?
Okay, question 1. On a personal level, for me, it's really about stepping into my power this year. And like, you know, as like a chronic people pleaser, somebody who spent my whole life people pleasing, I think with the work that I do and the kind of the growing following, it's really difficult to step into your power and be your true self, right? Without getting pulled into wanting to make everybody that comes across you like you and buy into what you're doing.
Yeah.
And that has meant that sometimes that I don't step into my power, that I avoid my power and I get caught up trying to please everybody. And I think we did a podcast a couple of years ago when I probably had a bit of a wake-up call to it, the initial wake-up call to it, which was when at the start of COVID, when I posted something about Boris Johnson. I think it was the first sort of, at the time, it felt wide-scale kickback that I got against myself online. And it pushed me to go, right, well, I can't impress everybody. And so I'm going to step into my power. And I, you know, I went down that path a little bit, and then, you know, I took my foot off it. But this year, I really want to embody that, you know. And I think what I've learned is that if I am making everybody like me, then there's some self-abandonment going on somewhere.
Yeah.
Right? I'm abandoning myself, and I'm turning up as versions of myself to please everybody else. And so I really want to step in. I want to make people not like me this year.
Yeah.
Which is an interesting thing to
It's
say,
really easy
right?
to do. Don't worry. No, really, I take a lot of inspiration from that, but also it resonates because I think I've sort of, I feel, a similar kind of feeling around stepping in. And anyone that's listened to this podcast for any given period of time will know that actually we've really started to shift into that space here in these conversations.
Yeah.
Because even though the intention of this podcast when we set out in during that first lockdown was to create the space where we didn't have to kind of put our professional masks on, we were still really second guessing what the world would be thinking of us as we spoke. Whereas now I think we're a lot more comfortable saying what's on our mind, and actually that's an intention even further this year. But I think that's really, really important because we can spend so much of our time, particularly on social media, just worrying about the impact of what we might say, and that's understandable, right? And
Yeah.
it is understandable, but I think it's, you have to recognize that you could be abandoning yourself unless you really do speak your truths.
Yeah, and I think the ways that we trick and deceive ourselves for that to play out is why it's, a constant lifetime of work, right? Because you're always peeling back those layers, right? And you think I'm being completely authentic and I'm being myself. And then, you go a little bit deeper and you realize, wow, I've been that's not me. I've created a new character in a new way. And look, it's not that those characters are to be put down or like pretend that they're not a good part of ourselves. But I think there's always more work to do. And look, that can feel awkward for me. For me to be like, this is what I think, feel, and believe, and I'm going to say it. And if you don't like it, then, that's tough. That feels uncomfortable for me to say sometimes. But I think it's the truth. I think we need more people like that because otherwise, what do you stand for? I remember once hearing, so I don't remember who it was, but they said something like, if you never upset anyone with the things that you say, then you're not saying anything at all.
Yeah, I've heard a version of that, which is something like, if you stand for everything, then you stand for nothing.
Yeah. Good quotes. Who by? Nobody knows.
Should we just take them?
Yeah. So what about you? Mine is stepping into my power. What's your intentions for the year?
So my intention for the year is really just to focus on my pyramid of priorities.
Yeah. I'm only laughing because we've talked about this in the privately, and I take the piss out of you a little.
No, I we talk about the word of the year, and I'm not really going to spend a lot of time on that because we did this same time last year. But my word of the year is lead, and in order to lead, for me, I've broken it down into two parts: self-leadership and then leadership of others.
Yeah.
Self-leadership, and I start with self-leadership because in order to be able to truly lead others, in our business or having a point of view or championing the things that we care about, I've got to start with myself, and then kind of my immediate circle. So if I want change for me, and then if I want change for my family, then I can't just demand it. I've got to put the work in. So I was trying to think, well, there's just a lot to do. How do I do it? So I came up with this concept while I was kind of in the downtime period at the end of last year. Came up with a concept called the pyramid of priority. And the idea behind that is that you can't, for me certainly, and I think there's a lot of evidence that if you try to start too many things at the same time, it's very difficult to get traction. So for me, I think I wanted to identify what my number one priority is, and then what's the next one and the one after that, and then sort of just focus on those three. And then if I have a ripple effect from that and it causes lots of good things to happen, then great, but I'm just going to focus on that. So my intention this year is to focus on my pyramid of priority. So my three priorities are, number one, sleep. Sleep is something I've deprioritized my whole kind of adult life. Certainly since having kids and running a business, I've always convinced myself I don't actually need a lot of sleep. But everything that I've read in terms of high performance, longevity of life, health, all point, every time I read a top 5 or a top 3 or a top 7, sleep is always there and usually towards the top. So what that means for me is, I read somewhere they have 3, 2, 1. So no food before 3 hours before sleep, no liquids 2 hours before sleep, no screens 1 hour before sleep. So I've really tried to adopt that since the start of the year, reading and not looking at phones and stuff like that in the last hour. And yeah, it's a bit of a journey, but generally I've been reading a lot more. And then my next one on a triangle is structures and rhythms. So the idea that systems need to kind of help me do what I need to do. And one of my biggest drainers is being efficient. I love to procrastinate, so having systems will really help me kind of keep the things that are important. And then the last one on my pyramid is learning. All roads of everything for me begin with learning, but I've deprioritized that. So those are the three that I want to.
Did you make up this pyramid of priority?
Yeah,
your trademark, is it?
I believe so. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know that. I thought you just got it from somewhere. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very good, mate.
Yeah.
And so, what was the other question?
Yeah. So the question,
what do I want for the?
What are you hopeful for? Because it's not like.
Yeah.
I think hopeful for versus what do you think will happen?
I mean, look. I guess if I had a hope, it would be that we can come back together as people and actually start to really reform. And we talked about this loads of times, but reform communities that come back together against the systems of power that we exist in. I'm hopeful for it, but I don't know how hopeful. Not when you look out into the world.
Yeah.
What about you?
Do you know, I'm just my hope is doused with realism, a bit like yours. I think I'm hopeful that we can just level out a little bit, in that it feels like last year was a tough year for society as a whole with, cost of living impacting so many people. You've got job losses, you've got, people living in poverty. You've got, Ukraine, Russia war and the global impact, health issues, all that sort of stuff. So just leveling out is, and starting to kind of see some green shoots. Like there was not a lot to look at last year and go, oh, there's some hope there. There's a bit of green there. So I think I'm hoping that there's just a little bit of spring that's coming this year. In terms of likelihood, I think this is going to be another very difficult year.
Until there's some kind of change, I think the years ahead look difficult.
Yeah. Well, speaking of which,
good segue.
Good segue. So I wanted to just talk about. I thought, should we talk about New Year's intentions and resolutions? And then you and I have talked about stepping into power. You just did now, and we've talked about how we're going to use this podcast. And I think we have both declared that we want to make sure that we're having really, really important conversations. So we're going to bash Tories for an hour. Look, the Conservative Party has been in power for 12 years.
Yeah.
Right. May 2010 was when they were elected.
That's 12 and a half years, right? So it's
12 and a half,
years,
nearly
right?
13. May will be 13. So they will be in power, for 13 years at least. During that time, I think there've been six leaders.
All right.
And only 2 of them have been elected. So that was David, elected by the public. So that's David Cameron.
Yeah.
Right.
Knob. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
David Cameron.
Yeah.
And then Boris Johnson again when he called the general election.
So they're the 2 that were elected. Yeah.
But he wasn't elected originally.
No.
Boris Johnson.
Yeah.
So the majority of Conservative leaders that we've had in this almost 13-year period have been unelected by the people.
Yeah.
And they've just kind of passed the job like it's theirs to be able to hand around to each other.
Yeah.
There's been a 12, 13-year decline in living standards, right? Progressively, unemployment has risen. We had Brexit, and we've obviously had the kind of the COVID stuff, which was global, but we have our points of view on how it was handled.
But we're not allowed to talk about them. Carry on.
No, we can't talk about them. Yeah, we can. Yeah, we might do. We've seen story after story of sleaze and corruption and all that sort of stuff. Such to the point now that Rishi Sunak is Prime Minister, and people are living in abject poverty, and people who shouldn't be living in poverty are living in poverty. People who are working, nurses, teachers, postal workers, and all of these people have found themselves having to strike to improve their pay and working conditions. Mm-hmm. Rishi Sunak a few days ago, or his government, announced that there are some anti-strike legislation that's about to come in, which is going to give bosses the opportunity to sue unions and fire potentially employees who strike. What do you think about that?
Well, where do I start with everything that you've said? I just want to take.
Okay.
I want to take firstly what you've said about the fact that they've been in power for nearly 13 years, yeah, and the prime ministers.
Yeah, I was using that to set context of where we find ourselves.
Yeah, I know, but I do want to have a couple of moments to speak about it, because I don't think that it's just that they've all been unelected, but they have progressively got, in my opinion, worse.
Yeah.
Like, if you look at like David Cameron, he like seems like almost like middle ground in comparison to what we have now, to me. Then when you go to Theresa May, who I hated at the time, again, I'd take that over what we've got any day of the week now.
Yep.
Yeah. Then Boris Johnson, don't even get me started. Liz Truss, who
45 days.
45 days, yeah. And then to what we've got now, who, by the way, I think is the worst of the lot by a country mile.
Liz Truss.
No, the
Rishi.
one with Rishi Sunak. I think he's the worst by a country mile.
Yeah.
And the reason I think he's the worst is because I think he's very, very good at wearing a disguise and looking like he's not the worst, and actually looking like he's way more David Cameron than he is Boris Johnson, and he ain't.
Yeah.
He's not. I think he's worse than all of them.
Yeah.
Perhaps put together.
Why? Why do you think he's worse? Just
because I think he's very, very devious. I think he's got that charisma that's needed to hide how devious and horrible he is, right? He does not in the slightest, remotest bit care about anyone below a certain class level. A class level, by the way, that I think most people can't reach, which we'll probably get into talk about in this conversation that we're going to have now. To come to the question about the legislation to bring it in to stop protests, right? I think what those in power, along with their partners in crime, which is the media, I think what they've done very, very well, they've been very good at doing, is pitting everybody against the protesters rather than what the protesters stand for. And I think they've done very well at that. I mean, I'd love to know what the general consensus is amongst the public of who they should be angry at, but it feels like, the media are... I don't know if you've seen any of that Richard Madley. Is that his name?
Madley, yeah.
Madley.
Yeah.
Him interviewing, what's the main guy from the...
RMT union.
Lynch.
Yeah.
And the way that he speaks condescending and down to him, like disgusted about what he's doing against us and the people. And I think, I'm going to say it, stepping into my power, fuck off, Richard Madley. Are you any kind of representation for who I am? Or the average person on the street, in my opinion. Yeah. And that's what you've got. You've got him thinking he's stepping up for the people. Yeah. He's not. Yeah. So I'm trying to get to the question. I actually want to read something. I don't know if you will have come across this in the research that you've done for the show, but I just want to read. Do you know anything about the winter of discontent?
Yes.
Let me remind you, right? Because you obviously not looked at it for this, right? But I came across this article. The winter of 1978 to 1979 became known as the winter of discontent, right? As widespread strikes across multiple trade unions brought Britain to a standstill. To tackle rising inflation, James Callaghan's Labour government had imposed wage limits, much to the opposition of the TUC. Combined with the coldest winter in 16 years, workers up and down the country went on strike. The widespread unrest led to the fall of that Labour government as the Conservatives under Margaret Thatcher returned to power via a landslide victory in 1979. But here's the key point. When they came back into power, right, the strikes were against the wage, the imposed wage limits, right? Labour came in a landslide as a result of that. Mm-hmm. You'd think that their first thing to do would be to address...
You mean the Tories?
The Tories, sorry. Yeah. The Tories came into power as a result of that. You'd think that a government coming in to take over, the first thing they would do is address the issue that everybody was protesting against. What they actually did was pass legislation that restricted the power of trade unions. Yeah. So this is not a new thing for Tories, right? This is very, very calculated. Yeah. And so the way that they're tackling this is to push the blame onto the people that are protesting. Yeah. And so it's disgusting. And I don't think people are aware of this.
No, they're not. But I do think, I think that with nurses and medical professionals and teachers, it changes the landscape, because over the years, certainly recently, we've been quite familiar with transport firms, staff striking, right? And so that's what we talk about. So when people are thinking about, is it inconvenient? When Richard Madley's talking about that, he's talking about, can he get to work or whatever, right?
Yeah.
And it's probably annoyed him, and therefore he's speaking on behalf of the people, right?
Yeah.
But when nurses who just only 2 years ago we would come out on a Thursday evening, right, or the NHS and clap them for what they were doing for us during COVID, to see that they're having to resort to this is what I think is shifting some public opinion. So I'd be really interested to see how people would poll against this, because I think that there'd be more support than there might have been if it was just,
Are you saying that, and this genuine question, not a loaded question remotely, are you saying that in hope, or have you seen any evidence that it's shifting?
I'm saying it in hope, Josh.
Yeah. I ask genuinely because, I don't read the news very purposely. I do a little bit of looking on Twitter, but that in itself is an echo chamber based on the people that I sort of follow and stuff like that. But a lot of what I see is just about talking about how the NHS is breaking, right? So, I see the Tories, assuming they stay in power, which we might talk about whether they will. I see they probably going to use this as an opportunity as well to privatise it even more and more.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So it's more leverage for them.
This feels like it's very calculated and very, very deliberate and strategic.
Yeah.
There's a lot of interest in privatising big swathes of the NHS, if not entirely, because that then gives insurance companies, their foothold into this country, and then it's just crazy. I'm just reading a book at the moment by a guy called Rob Delaney, and you may or may not know him, but he's like a TV star, and he lost his son to cancer, who was very young, but he's an American, and he had just come over to the UK to film the first 2 seasons of this show that kind of blew up. And just talks really, really eloquently and poignantly about like his journey, but just about how amazing the NHS is for somebody who's an American, who really understands how horrible it can be when you're trying to do everything you can when like your young child is going through a terminal illness. And then to suddenly think you have to negotiate with an insurance company as to whether they can even get care or not.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just heartbreaking.
Yeah.
And then there's all the people that can't afford it, right? And so many of our population would fall into that.
Yeah.
So then what happens is you don't get that that care that you need. So I mean, if for nothing else, there needs to be a regime change just to protect the NHS and reinvest in the NHS. It's really scary and worrying.
And it's just, what came straight into my head is that you used the term "protect the NHS," which was a slogan for this government throughout the whole of COVID, right?
Yeah.
Which I know is something that people find.
I want to come on to that in a minute, actually.
Okay.
So I think what you pointed to about pointing it, by doing this legislation, we're now demonising the people for trying to say, listen, enough's enough. You've been cutting the NHS year after year after year after year. And so we are doing an incredibly important job. We are not getting a cost of living adjustment. We are now being pushed into poverty on top of having to work crazy hours. And we're demonizing, by doing this anti-strike legislation, we're demonizing those people, or they're demonizing those people. It's classic deflect, and I won't just say that the Tories do it. Any political party does it, probably the ones that have been in a long time. Let's just deflect away from how badly we're doing or what we don't want you to see or think about by pointing you over here. And so I actually want to just kind of move us on now just to this whole notion of Rishi Sunak saying, study now compulsory to study maths until you're 18. Have you seen that?
Yeah.
What do you think of that?
Look, I posted about this on LinkedIn, right? And what I find interesting is that people that are against it and see how stupid it is, all say the same thing. This shows how out of touch this government is. This shows how they don't understand what's going on and all of that stuff. I think that's naive.
Yeah.
To think
say more.
That a structure of this power that's been in this long are out of touch or don't know what's going on. I mean, for a long time, that would have been my line. But the more that I look into it, the more I've done this podcast and the more I've researched stuff and the more I start to see how these structures work, they're not out of touch. They know exactly what they're doing. They know exactly what they're doing. So I always now, when these things come in that just seem grossly out of touch, right, I go, right, let's make the assumption that they're not out of touch. So why the fuck are they doing it? Is the next question. If it's not out of touch, why are they doing it?
I'll tell you why.
Go on.
Oh, you can't pay your bills? You can't save money? That's because you're not very financially numerate and literate.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's because you gave up maths when you were 15, Josh, and therefore you don't know how to add up. Therefore, it's your fault.
Yeah.
It's not our fault. It's your fault.
So do you think, this genuine question again, do you think that is a case of being misguided in their thinking and actually thinking that you really need to help these people so that they can be better at maths, because that's why it is?
No.
Or do you think it's to be able to have weight when they say, this is fucking on you, you've had every chance, same as everyone else? And that is the worrying thing about where we're at, yeah? I don't think it is just that, although I do think that is a large part of it. I also think that this is something that really, really supports the people, generally speaking, of course, but really supports the people of a certain class, one that is very much closer to the class of Rishi Sunak, yeah? So anybody who is way down in that system that's still there, that we've tried to push under and pretend that we all get the same, chances and all of that stuff, they get no support whatsoever, yeah? Rishi Sunak has also released statements, by the way, this links to this, saying that we hate, and he didn't use these words, but this is what he says, we hate antisocial people and we're going to make sure that we clamp down on them with tougher sentences, yeah, and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, so like the people who struggle to be able to be parts of society in a healthy way because of their upbringing and the things that these governments have taken away from them, they actually get clamped down on. Yeah. Whereas the people who are struggling, they really want to become a data analyst and could do with a bit more, couple more years of maths, they're being helped and supported. You see? So
yeah.
I will never believe that these bad things are done by misguided.
It's definitely not misguided, but also, let's say you bring in this policy and you want to get more kids from the ages of 16 to 18 doing maths. Mm-hmm. Let's say you now bring in, 100,000 more do it, right? That then, which is a relatively straightforward exercise, you just kind of mandate it. Schools have to do it because schools just have to fall in line. How are we going to pay for it? Fuck you, figure it out. Yeah. That's basically, I know head teachers and that's basically what gets said. So they'll say, we'll do this, then they give no support because there's obviously a cost to, you're going to have to get more maths teachers and maths literate and you've got to do all of that. What's the curriculum going to be? There's all that work that needs to happen. And then, but let's say because they bully teachers and local education authorities and into doing it at whatever cost, suddenly those quotas get pushed up and suddenly they've got 100,000 more kids who've done maths at A level. And then they get to kind of, just as a general election's about to come in, they get to say, oh, well, we've now got 100,000 more children who are maths A-level educated, which then they will then spin to say, well, that's going to kickstart our financial, make us a world great again and connect that to Brexit and all that sort of stuff. And so it is completely strategic and deliberate because it gives... They can't control what's going on in the economy. They can't control so many things that they want to be able to control. So they can really keep. So they, mark my words, right? When it comes to election time, and if Rishi Sunak's still in power, he's going to say. Anytime they'll say, but what about the cost of living? Yes, but look at the 100,000 kids that have now done maths. And that's just giving them sound bites for the future.
Yeah, I guess the only thing that I would probably pick up on is that I think they have way more control over the economy than you say. Where they say they can't control
Maybe,
it, they are controlling it,
Yeah.
fucking very rigidly. And I think they know exactly what they're doing, and it means they get to keep their power while looking like they are doing something.
There's always going to be things that a government will be controlling that they can't say they can control, but then there's going to be a load of stuff that they can't and they wish they could.
Yeah.
But in having these 4 or 5 sound bites, that's all we're going to hear.
Yeah.
And so I think that's a really difficult, thing. Now, just to kind of bring a bit of balance, as well, I'm not saying that I don't believe people should be more, numerate, right?
Yeah.
Because it's a good skill. It is a good skill. But what would be better is teaching kids. I say kids. Young adults, right? Teenagers. The perils of bad credit and what that does to you. The importance of compound interest, for example. So in real, maths in practical terms. So investing if you can, or if you're gonna, with the different kinds of opportunities available to you, even if an academic path doesn't feel like it's for you.
Yeah.
In saying maths for everyone, it's completely ignoring neurodiversity, the fact that people can kind of grow and create stuff without maths. Did you see Simon Pegg?
I have seen the video. Yeah.
If anyone hasn't seen Simon Pegg going on a bit of a rant, I strongly recommend it's worth doing, even if you're not a Simon Pegg fan. What did you think of his rant?
I thought it was brilliant. Yeah, I think it said everything that needs to be said. I think if I'm trying to be balanced here, one of the problems with it will be is that he's ranting and getting a bit sweary and that, and then people will just go, look, it's just ranting and it's a bit sweary. But that would then be, reactive abuse to him anyway, because he should be angry. And this comes back. Sorry before you come in, this comes back to what I say about stepping into our power. Like, now's not the time, man. I don't think we're at a time in society where we should be shrinking violets and be like, just trying to bring love to the conversation all the time. I think we need directed and clear things said in the way that Simon Pegg said it.
Well, I think exactly right. I think the thing about the Simon Pegg rant, and he's just in case you don't go and see it, he sits in his car and he just absolutely unloads on the Tory government and Rishi Sunak's plan to get mathematics compulsory until 18. But he's also pointing to what about all the other people that maths doesn't speak to, and I think he's got a platform because he's kind of he's been creating, not just as an actor but creating productions and all that sort of stuff. But it spoke to us too because we're already leaned in, right?
Yeah.
And I think the rant is important because it shows like you really care, and you need people who sit along the spectrum who can have reasonable debate. It's not to be any less passionate, but I think just bringing people into the conversation, speaking about it like on podcasts like this, in the way that we're doing. I think it's really important, particularly if there's 2 people in a conversation, that at least one of you's trying to go, okay, well, what would the other side think?
Yeah, and look, they've got previous on that, by the way, in terms of like creatives and arts, weren't they? Because remember the poster during COVID, or at the end of COVID, or whenever it was, and it had a picture of a ballerina or something, didn't it? And it said, I don't know, a name, Sally's next job could be data analysis or something stupid like that, wouldn't it?
Yeah,
she could she might be upset that she can't be a ballerina anymore because we've chucked her out the window. Yeah. So like they've got previous on that, right? And again, what that is it becomes very like they're creating more like exclusive clubs, right? And they're helping people in the exclusive club, and everyone else is just unlucky. And to come back to your point as well, where you talked about the importance of maths, I think it's important to say that because the knee-jerk reaction is some of the posts that I've seen is like, my maths teacher said, you won't be able to carry a calculator around with you, and now I carry it around in my pocket. I've seen that line spun in various different forms loads of times. I think we have to be careful. Maths, I think, is fucking really important. Yep. It's the language of science as well, and stuff like that, right? Yep. So it's not just a case of sums, right?
Yeah.
Like it's entwined into a lot of the the ways that you would integrate into your life, and some of which you just talked about. So it is important. But here's the thing, right? To stop it being an exclusive club, I would be much better at learning at maths, yeah, if I didn't have a stressed, overwhelmed teacher trying to teach me it.
Yeah.
Right? Because this government for the last 13 years have systematically withdrawn funding to support children. Yeah. So my maths, children that exist in today's world, all of them, the academic ones, right down to the people who are not academic, that might be, living in poverty, or the ones that are academic living in poverty, all of those would benefit way more by having a properly funded system that supports children, yeah, rather than removing funding in the way that they have consistently over year upon year upon year.
Yeah, 100%. The thing you say about maths, by the way, is absolutely true. Like its connection to more than just being able to do sums, I think, is an important point that needed to be made. And the world has moved on,
Yeah.
right? And there are skills beyond that, that would suit certain people better.
Yeah.
So I know that things have to be contained. You can't just go, hey, suddenly just kind of do whatever. But from a government's point of view, that they need to drive a policy, but maybe it needed to be less prescriptive around one subject and more about opening, let's say, STEM. Science, technology, and maths as well, right? So just creating the opportunities, and then there's the creative side as well. But it just clearly shows kind of the value that that this government places on anything outside of this one subject. So you mentioned earlier about there being form, and one thing that I was thinking about was Labour hasn't had a better chance than now, I would say, for a long time to do something about it. And the thing that keeps popping into my head, and a lot of people might not like this this kind of metaphor, but there's a saying that goes, "Don't bring a knife to a gunfight."
Yeah.
And what you were talking about, the kind of the NHS being promised, as part of that election manifesto, they just made up lies.
Yeah.
They said 350 million a week is going to go back into the NHS.
From Brexit.
From Brexit. It's an absolute lie, right? And so when I say don't bring a knife to a gunfight, it's like, don't just kind of say, oh, you're lying, and just kind of make them wrong. You need to really get into the psychology of people if you want to win the next election. So, and this may be kind of controversial, but they need Labour or whatever coalition or whatever party, they need to help people see really quickly that this government is trying to take, let's say, their NHS away. Yeah. Let's say that they want to further underfund society by taking stuff away and taxing the most needy and not enough of the people or the companies that should be. And they should be really, really, really putting all of their energy behind that. But it just feels like Labour just keeps coming back, not even with a knife, they come back with a sponge baseball bat, you know what I mean?
A foam finger.
Yeah, foam finger, yeah, exactly. Like something has to change, right?
If there was a general election tomorrow, who would win? Fucking shouldn't be that hard, man, where we're at.
I know, but I'd like to say that Labour has made ground, right? And opinion polls suggest that they have.
Who wins it, election tomorrow?
I think the Tories win it again.
Do you?
I do.
No, can't
I don't want it. I don't.
I know
want
you don't
it,
want it.
But
I know you don't want it.
I think people are still like, more better the better the devil than you don't. And here's the other thing: the Tory party and their backers are so good at manipulation, and they're so good at election manipulation. They're so good at it.
And let me just say this. I think I've said in the past that I probably wouldn't vote if there was another general election.
Yeah.
Right. And you got upset about it.
Yeah.
And I think if this had been any other general election, like, a normal one where I just, I think we've got to be a bit careful about the lesser of, the two evils and all of that stuff. I sort of firmly believe that they're all a joke.
Yes.
I firmly believe they're all a joke. But let me just say this. I do think that now, because of this 13 years that we live in, we are living in what is a hyper-conservative time. Yeah? Where it's this, they've got so much power, they've been in there for so long now, they've pushed the boundaries too far. And what I would encourage anybody that's listening to this even if you are a Tory, right? You probably fucking ain't listening to this. But even if your beliefs are more conservative,
Yeah.
right? Even if your beliefs are more conservative or you feel despondent, I do think that when the election comes, now is the time to bring us away from this hyper conservative thing and actually give the other people a crack at the whip to try and bring it back towards centre somewhere. I don't know I think Keir Starmer's a fucking alien. I think he's a moron. I think he's pretty useless. But, you know, it could be anybody in there. Do you know what I mean? Mickey Mouse. And I think it would be better to just we need to pull the power away from people that are so enthralled in it now. And I think anything is better.
It's going to be 13 years in May. No one political party, certainly not where the majority of leaders have been unelected, should be in power that long. It's just, you cannot stay pure. Not that they were ever pure, but you can't stay pure.
I know. But what's a shame is that, imagine what you could do with 13 years. If you put in somebody and said, here's 13 years.
They did imagine, and a lot of them have benefited from it.
Well, I know, but this is the thing. Do you know what I mean? That's the problem. Part of me says 4 years is too short, because what can you do? That's why they want tweetable stats, yeah? Because they're only in for 4 years. They don't care about, they don't care about 4-year-olds because they won't be in, they might not be in power when they get there. So
I do agree.
I agree with what you're saying, right? I agree with what you're saying, but they shouldn't have been in power this long. They shouldn't have been in power this long, and it's twisted. It's a twisted mess. And I know we're sort of out of time here, but
good conversation.
Yeah, very good. Yeah.
And if anyone didn't realise that we're not big fans of the current government, they certainly will be after this episode. It's not even about the current government. It's more on it's one for the team. We're doing this for the team. You know what I mean? Like society.
Yeah, and I think, look, I think it would probably look differently, but I think if Labour were in for 13 years, right, then they would be a tangled mess as well with that long with the power, right? I think most people would. I think power's highly, highly fucking addictive.
Yeah.
And I think it's problematic, like you've just said, for anybody to be in power that long, which is a shame, but I think it's true.
Yeah, brilliant. Great conversation, Josh. Very quickly, we're going to do reasons to be cheerful.
Have you got one?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Well, I'll do mine then. I want to shout out to my mate Jonah, who lost his dad just before Christmas. This is a reason to be cheerful. Jonah's been my best friend since I was a very young man, 18, 19. He looked after me in my darkest of days. And he got in touch to let me know that his dad had passed away. And we met up. We met up over Christmas, and we've stayed in touch. And just to know that through everything, I've got a friendship like that in somebody like Jonah, means the world to me. So, just shout out to Jonah, really, on that. Reasons to be cheerful. And yours?
I can't top that one, so I'm going to leave it there. But
no, fuck you. You got to do it. You got to do it. Come on. What is your reasons to be cheerful? What is it? Is it melty? Come on.
It is a bit melty now compared to... No. My reason to be cheerful is, you and I have talked about this, and we may go into it in one of the episodes, but towards the end of last year, I really started to realise and recognise the impact of my childhood on my adult self and how I show up, and both the good and the bad sides of me. And I just had some crystallising moments towards the end of last year around things that I'd convinced myself of or forgotten about actually started to really inform me. So the reason to be cheerful is just really... I'm excited about the journey I'm going on and continue to go on in terms of discovering self, and I'm happy to talk about it, through this podcast.
Brilliant, man. And listen, one of your best friends is the man when it comes to that kind of stuff, so I'll help you through it, mate. That wasn't melty at all. It's a fucking good one, man.
All right, well.
Probably better than mine, mate. This has been brilliant. Look forward to the next episode, and we'll see you all very soon.